Hello, everyone. We are live. Let me make sure that we are live on Instagram also. One second here. And here we go. We are live. Okay. So we are live on Instagram and X and YouTube. And please make sure to follow on all those platforms. This will be posted also as a video later, and also a podcast. So you can find us on podcasts for Apple and Spotify. Just look up my name, Joshua Fontanilla. You'll find me all there as well. And we will eventually get this on Rumble as well. So we're on X, YouTube, Instagram, podcasting, and Rumble. All right, so this is the second part in a series. I did not do the first one of this series live. We're going to do this one live, and then it'll be edited later. So we'll try this out. We'll see how this works doing a live Bible study. Welcome, everyone. Share this, get your friends to watch it, all that good stuff. So, my name is Joshua Fontanilla. This is the second part, like I said, in our series on the New World Order and Bible prophecy. So, that is our subject. This is going to be a 9-part series. We've already done part 1. This is part 2. So, it is on the New World Order and Bible prophecy. And our previous study, we looked at Revelation chapter 18, and we looked at how the entire New World Order can be described and can be found in that one chapter, Revelation chapter 18. So we are going to continue that now. Let me get my slides on the screen. There we go. Okay, so we saw how the entirety of the New World Order can be found in one chapter, Revelation 18, and it's summarized in that chapter. And now we're going to go into more detail. Now we're going to go into more depth. But whatever you want to call the New World Order, if you want to call it the swamp, the establishment, the elite, the whatever, the Illuminati, there's a lot of different names. It's all the same thing. It's the same idea. But the point that we're trying to point across here is that these things have been predicted in Bible prophecy. So if you see the powers that be in this world today and you're thinking there's some evil going on in the world leaders, there's something wrong with these people, there is some evil going on in this world, I would agree with you, and I suggest to you that the Bible agrees with you as well. And these things were predicted. These things were pointed out so that we can know what's going to happen before it happens. All right. So the New World Order and Bible prophecy. Let's get into part 2. Today's study is on the Revelation and Daniel connection. So the connection between the book of Revelation and the book of Daniel. Why is that important? Well, here's our point. And let's get to the point first, and then I'll backtrack and tell you why it's important. What we really want to do in these series of lessons is we want to understand the most important chapters in Revelation. For example, Revelation chapter 13. It's right at the center of the book, and that's on purpose. Revelation is written in a chiastic structure. It's not the way we write today. You know, when you're in school, you're taught to write a 5-paragraph essay. That's not how Revelation is written. It's not written like that. So you can't read it from that mindset. You have to understand that Revelation is written in the time of Greek society. It's written in Greek. And a popular way of writing back then, and this was a popular way of writing among the Hebrews as well, is to use a chiastic structure where the most important part, the climax, is in the center. And so Revelation 13 is right in the center of the book. That's the climax. That's the depiction of the end of time, Revelation 13. That's the one, the famous chapter with the mark of the beast. And in this image you see here, here's this beast with 7 heads and 10 horns. And there's, you know, fire coming down out of the sky. And there's a lamb-like beast. You can't really see it behind the words there, but that's the idea. This is an artist's depiction of Revelation 13. That's what we want to understand. We want to understand what's the mark of the beast? Who is this beast? What is this 666 and all this stuff? We want to understand that. But in order to understand that, you have to realize that Revelation is quoting the book of Daniel. So you need to know what it's quoting. So our goal is to understand Revelation 13. But first, you need to understand at least some of the book of Daniel, not the whole thing. We don't have time for that in a 9-part series. It's short. We're already on part 2. We're not going to look in the whole book of Daniel. But we are going to look at a couple of chapters that are quoted in Revelation. Now, you'll hear me say this a few times throughout this series. The book of Revelation is 404 verses. Of that, 270 plus are quotes from the Old Testament. Either quotes or paraphrases from the Old Testament. Okay? So what does that tell you? It tells you that Revelation is quoting the Old Testament because it wants you to go back and read what it's quoting, right? The way that Revelation is written is brilliant. No man could ever write like this. This is one of the ways you know that this is from God. It's written in a way that it's encoded in symbols, and the symbols are translated elsewhere in the Bible. So if you are a Christian who knows your Bible, you will get what God is trying to say. But if you're an outsider, it just sounds like, oh, what is that? Nobody understands. And the sad thing is today, a lot of Christians read the Revelation and they think, oh, what's that? Oh, who knows? And they read it like an outsider. When really, if you knew your Bible better, if you studied Daniel and some of these other prophetic Old Testament books, you would be thinking, oh, Revelation's quoting that. Let's go back to see what it's quoting. And then the symbols are explained in the Bible itself. That's why it's so important to understand Daniel in order to understand Revelation. With me so far? All right, we're going to keep moving on. So, and this is just an interesting fact. Did you know that when Martin Luther translated the Old Testament into German, he started with the book of Daniel? Martin Luther, imagine, he's translating the Bible into the language that the German people can read for the first time in centuries. Average German person couldn't read the Bible. He's translating it, and what does he do? When he gets to the Old Testament, he says, the book of Daniel is so important, I'm starting there. I'm not going to start with Genesis, I'm going to start with Daniel, because the people need to read this. Interesting fact, right? And Martin Luther was an avid student of Bible prophecy. Okay. So here's our agenda for today. This is all we're going to look at today, and I'm going to try and go quickly. We're going to show the connection between Revelation and the book of Daniel. Then we're going to look at some basic principles on understanding Bible prophecy. And finally, we're going to end by showing that Satan is behind all evil world dictators. Sounds interesting, right? That's all we're going to do today. Okay, quick recap. Our last study was on Revelation chapter 18, and we looked at how Babylon, how the Tower of Babel was the original, I guess you'd say, old world order, not new world order, old world order. So Babel, the Tower of Babel, was this idea of uniting all the world into one and having one common goal, and that was to subvert the will of God and have man make his own way to get to heaven. That was the Tower of Babel, and it was in defiance of God. And if you look at occult society, occultist teachings, which I don't recommend you do, but if you know about them, and if you look at secret societies and so forth, you will see that they trace their lineage back to the Tower of Babel. And there's a lot of all the major false religions in the world today, all the pagan religions come from the Tower of Babel. Okay? But the Tower of Babel was this idea of uniting all man. It's centralized into one world government. And watch the previous study if you haven't yet on that. But uniting all man behind one world government, that was the idea behind the Tower of Babel. But Babel later became Babylon, and it's in the same area, the land of Shinar, which eventually became the land of Babylon, and was a city started by Nimrod. We went into all that in the last study. Babylon was a world order during the time, a world power during the time of Israel. It took Israel captive, and all the world powers after it, whether it's the Persian Empire, the Greek Empire, the Roman Empire, and today the American Empire, and what we look at when we see the world order that they're trying to make today, where they're trying to unite all the world governments again today, all of that, really, they trace their roots back to Babylon and the Tower of Babel because each world empire built on the ideas of the previous one. So the Persian Empire learned from the Babylonian Empire. Why did they fail? Well, let's repeat some of their smart things and let's learn from their mistakes. And then the Greeks learned from the Persian Empire, and the Romans learned from the Greek Empire. And you see that when you study history, that the Romans borrowed a lot of things from Greek culture and from their way of structuring a government and so forth. And then they improved on it and so forth. And the American system, hey, I'm an American patriot, all that, but they did learn some things from the Romans. We copied their architecture and a lot of their symbols and so forth. And so Babylon, the spirit of Babylon exists in the world today. And when you look at Revelation, what it does is it uses the terms of old ancient empires like Babylon to describe what's going on in the New World Order today. That's a really quick recap. We're going to build on that now. Okay, the connection between Revelation and the book of Daniel. If you have never seen this, I'm sorry no pastor has ever shown this to you before, but it is so obvious and so amazing that I'm shocked that more Christians don't know this. But Revelation chapter 13, verses 1 and 2, I'm not going to read the whole thing. Read it when you have time. Revelation chapter 13, verse 1 and 2, it mentions this beast out of the sea. And I've highlighted the parts that I want you to notice right now. It says that this beast, I saw a beast rising up out of the sea having 7 heads, and it had 10 horns. I want you to notice that. We'll talk about the 7 heads another time. It says it had 10 horns. It said the beast, which I saw, was like a leopard. The feet were as the feet of a bear, and the mouth as the mouth of a lion. So notice that. It's a beast with 10 horns. It's like a leopard. Feet like the feet of a bear, mouth is the mouth of a lion. Okay. If you are familiar with Daniel, you should have light bulbs going off in your head thinking, I know this. I'm familiar with this. So Daniel chapter 7, verses 2 through 7, Daniel saw, and Daniel spoke and said, I saw in my visions by night 4 great beasts came up out of the sea. That already sounds familiar. A beast rising up out of the sea. In Revelation 13, Daniel saw 4 beasts coming out of the sea. And notice which 4 beasts they are. It's the same ones. He says the first was like a lion. The second, like a bear. And there was another, there's a third one, like a leopard. And then the 4th beast, dreadful and terrible, had 10 horns. So I put this in a chart for you. In Revelation, he sees a beast. Revelation 13, he sees a beast, 10 horns. It's like a leopard. Feet as the feet of a bear, mouth as the mouth of a lion. Daniel sees 4 beasts. The first is like a lion, second like a bear, third is like a leopard, 4th has 10 horns. It's the exact same ones, but it's in the opposite order. Right away, Revelation is quoting Daniel, and so you should probably go back and read Daniel if you want to understand Revelation. That's the idea. Now, why is it backwards? I'll explain this in more detail in the next lesson. But the reason why it's backwards is because Daniel, remember this, he lived 2,500 years ago. Daniel's living during the time of Babylon. And Daniel tells us, and I'll explain this in more detail in the next couple lessons. You don't have to take my word for it. But for now, I'll just tell you quickly. Daniel tells us that the first beast is the one that lives in his time period, the Babylonian Empire. It's symbolized as a lion with eagle's wings. That's Babylon. He's living during this time, and he's looking forward into the future, the next empire, the next empire, the next empire. Whereas John is living during the time of the Roman Empire, the beast with 10 horns, and he's looking backward in the past to seeing them in order, but backwards. All right. Now, you might be thinking, what do you mean? The lion, the lion with eagle's wings? That's the beast. That's the Babylonian Empire. Yes. Let me explain here. Why are the beasts listed in the opposite order? Again, because Daniel is looking forward into the future from the time of Babylon. John, who wrote Revelation, is looking into the past from the time of Rome, looking backwards. Again, Same beast, but in the opposite order. Now, this goes into the basic principles of understanding prophecy. I mentioned before that Revelation quotes the Old Testament and the symbols are explained elsewhere. Now I'm going to show you what I mean. Let's let the Bible explain itself. That's the key that we're going to do throughout this entire series. We're going to let the Bible explain itself. We're not just going to come up with our own ideas. Especially with prophecy, let the symbols be translated elsewhere in the Bible itself. So I said that the lion with eagle's wings is a symbol for Babylon. What am I talking about? Well, I'm getting this from the Bible itself. This is Daniel chapter 7, verse 17 and 23. In Bible prophecy, a beast is a symbol for a kingdom or a nation. So here's a quote. This is verse 17. These great beasts which are four kings which shall arise out of the earth. So it's not literal. It's not a literal beast. It's not a lion with eagle's wings. That's not literal. It's a symbol for a king. But then it tells us in verse 23, the fourth beast shall be the fourth kingdom on earth. So a beast in Bible prophecy is a symbol for a kingdom. Or today, we would say a nation. So, to put this very simply, a beast in Bible prophecy is just a symbol for a nation, and we do the same thing today. When you think of a bald eagle, what is that a symbol of? America, right? The bald eagle is a symbol of America. We do the exact same thing today when we have a national animal. So, panda is a symbol for China. And here's a good one that you probably won't guess unless you're from this place. What's a rooster? What country does that symbolize? It's France. Interesting, right? And then a lot of people will use like various, a dragon can be a symbol for China as well, things like that. But the idea is we're just saying a nation is symbolized by a animal, and the way that that animal is described and its place in history and all these things tells you which nation it's talking about. Okay? So, again, Daniel is written in the time of the first beast in order, because that's the pattern of Bible prophecy. It starts with the time of the prophet and goes into the future. So it starts with the one that he lived in, which was the lion with the eagle's wings, that is Babylon, and then he's looking forward to the future. John is written during the time of the 10-horned beast, which I'll explain in the next lesson, which is the Roman Empire, and he's looking back into the past. But more importantly, what I want you to see is that there's a connection between these two chapters. Revelation 13 mentions the same four beasts in this order: 10 horns, leopard, bear, lion. Daniel mentions the same thing, but the opposite order: lion, bear, leopard, 10 horns. There's a clear connection between the two. So you need to understand Daniel 7 before you can understand Revelation 13. If you try to read Revelation 13 just by itself, without letting the Bible explain itself, without studying Daniel first, you're probably going to come up with some weird ideas. But if you let the Bible explain itself, you'll be on solid ground. All right, moving on. So we looked and we saw our first example of the Bible explaining itself, which is to show that a beast in Bible prophecy is a symbol for a kingdom. And if you've never been told this by your pastor before, I'm sorry. Not to bag on whoever your pastor is, but it shocks me that this is not common knowledge among Christians. I wish somebody had told me this even before I learned it. It should be understood by everyone. The basic symbols of Bible prophecy. Okay, moving on. So a beast is a nation. These great beasts, which are four kings. The fourth beast shall be the fourth kingdom on the earth. Okay, that's Daniel 7. You don't have to guess what it means. It tells you what the symbols mean. By the way, if you've ever looked at like pagan, non-Christian prophecy like Nostradamus and stuff like that, that stuff is nonsense. And the reason you know it's nonsense is because it never tells you what the symbols mean, so they can mean anything you want. And you can just, it's this vague language, and that kind of sounds like maybe it's predicting this event. And you try to make it fit a world event after the world event happened. That's not the way Bible prophecy works. Bible prophecy tells you what the symbols mean, so it's very clear what it's predicting, and there's no guessing. And so it has to be accurate. Bible prophecy is 100% accurate. All right. So we saw that the four beasts were four kingdoms in Daniel 7. Four kingdoms, four nations, four world empires. Remember, the point of this study is all looking at the New World Order. So we're looking at the old world orders, four world empires, symbolized by four beasts. Here's what's interesting. These same world empires, these same kingdoms, were also predicted in Daniel chapter 2, but it uses a different symbol. Instead of beasts, it uses a statue, and I'm going to show you that in our next study. So Daniel 2 actually is the first one that you should look at. You should look at Daniel 2 because it gives you these four world empires. Four world empires. They're the same as the four beasts, and then those four beasts are mentioned in Revelation 13. So you see our connection? It goes from Daniel 2 to Daniel 7 to Revelation 13. So you really should start with Daniel 2 and 7, which is what we will do in the next study. Okay. So summary so far. And we're actually almost done. Revelation 13 quotes Daniel 7. Daniel 7 builds on Daniel 2. How do you understand prophecy? Well, you let the Bible explain itself. The symbols are explained elsewhere in the Bible. So let me give you one more example of this, just to be very clear what I'm trying to do here, letting the Bible explain itself. I said we talk about the heads later. So the 7 heads, this beast has 7 heads, and this is an artist depiction from Revelation 17. It's the same beast. It's this beast with 7 heads and 10 horns. The same beast. It's doing something a little different now, and now it has a woman on it, but it's the same beast. 7 heads, 10 horns. And you may read this and you think, that sounds like a crazy monster, right? But again, it's symbolic, and the Bible tells you what the symbols mean. Here is Revelation chapter 17, verse 9. You do not have to guess. It tells you. It says, "Here's the mind which has wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sits." Again, the symbols are translated in the Bible itself. Not like Nostradamus, where there's no translation of the symbols. It can mean anything you want. No, the Bible's specific. It tells you, here's beast, which is a nation, and this nation has 7 mountains. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sits. Okay, so again, these symbols are translated. Think of it like the parables that Jesus told. When Jesus told parables, he would explain what they meant, right? He would use symbols, yes, but the symbols he would then explain. You don't need to guess what they mean. So he'd use symbols like the parable of the sower, or he would have another one like trying to think off the top of my head, the parable of the treasure in the field, right? You have to a man finds a treasure in the field, or the parable of the sower, the guy, he throws the seed everywhere. And what does the seed symbolize? Well, it's the word, right? So again, it's symbolic parables, but it's translated in the Bible itself. That's the way Revelation works. It's very simple once you understand it. It's very simple. It's meant to be understood. All right, moving on. We're going to look again at how to understand Bible prophecy, and now we're going to look at something called juxtaposition, and this is our final point for today. And that is that Satan is behind all world dictators. Let me say this word again. How to understand Bible prophecy, the principle we're going to look at, juxtaposition. That means when two things are put next to each other. And in the Bible, when two things are put next to each other, it's for a reason. Those two things are put next to each other for a reason. So this is our final point for today. We're going to look at how Satan is behind all evil world dictators. That's something that's clearly taught in the Bible. And we're going to see it from the juxtaposition. Okay, Don't worry about that word if you don't know what, if you've never heard it before, if you don't know what it means. Um, you're going to see what I'm talking about here in a second. So, the fall of Lucifer. This is found in. Let's see here. Make sure my screen's correct. Just want to make sure this is showing the screen correct. Okay, cool. So, the fall of Lucifer, this is all in Isaiah. Isaiah chapter 14 and starting in verse 12. So I'm not going to read this whole passage. I put this on the screen really quickly so that you guys can get the idea of it. I recommend reading this later when you get a chance. Read the whole chapter. It's great. But what you'll see here is it starts in verse 3. And these are just, I put arrows here so that you can see the headlines, the subtitle, I'm sorry, the titles of the sections that are just in my Bible. Your Bible may say something different for the headlines because those are added, right? But it gives you a summary of what it's talking about. It starts Isaiah chapter 14 with the fall of the king of Babylon. So that's in verse 3 through verse 8 or so. You'll see, or actually through like verse 11. It's the fall of the king of Babylon. But then it jumps in verse 12 and it starts talking about the fall of Lucifer. Well, that's interesting. So first it's talking about the king of Babylon, then it jumps to the fall of Lucifer. Then it goes back to Babylon destroyed and one of the neighboring nations of Babylon, Assyria, destroyed. So why is it that the fall of the king of Babylon is put right next to the fall of Lucifer? And it's clear this is talking about Lucifer if you read it. It says, "How are you fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning?" It talks about how he wanted to ascend his throne above the stars of God. He wanted to be like the Most High. He wanted to be God. That's what happened. That's why Lucifer fell, right? But why is the fall of Lucifer right next to the fall of Babylon? The reason why, when two things are put next to each other in the Bible, juxtaposition, it's because there's something similar between the two. The king of Babylon and Lucifer are similar. And that is because Lucifer possesses the king of Babylon. He controls him. The king of Babylon is just his puppet. Whatever world evil dictator you see, just imagine Lucifer is the one behind the scenes holding the puppet strings. That's how it works. Okay? Another example. This is from Ezekiel chapter 28. It's very interesting. I'll explain what this image is for in a second. This is the Ark of the Covenant, but I'll explain why in a second. In Ezekiel chapter 28, and again, I recommend reading the whole chapter. I'm not going to read it right now for the sake of time. We see the same thing where verses 1 through 10 is about the king of Tyre, but then verses 11 through 19 is all about Lucifer. So the two are put next to each other. This is another world leader. Tyre used to be or Tyrus, depending on what you want to say, used to be a great world empire. Now, most people haven't heard of it, but it used to be a great world power. And Lucifer is compared to the king of Tyre through juxtaposition. The two are right next to each other. It goes from king of Tyre and then boom, immediately switches over to Lucifer. And the author doesn't even tell you he's switching to Lucifer. It just becomes obvious. Well, the Old Testament often does that. That's why a lot of people are confused by the Old Testament. It doesn't tell you a lot of times when it switches from one person talking to another person talking, things like that. But it's clear this is talking about Lucifer. It says that this whole area here in particular is all about Lucifer. It says he was the seal of perfection. It says he was in Eden, the garden of God. The king of Tyre was not in Eden. He was not in Eden back, when Eden was on the earth. It says he was the anointed cherub. That's a word for an angel. You're the anointed angel who covers. What does that mean? Well, again, this is the Ark of the Covenant. This is an artist's depiction of the Ark of the Covenant. On the Ark, on top of it, Moses was told to put a cherub, an angel, on either side on the top of the Ark of the Covenant. And these were the angels who covered the Ark of the Covenant. So it says that this angel was one of those two. Satan was one of these two covering cherubs. And again, if you're not familiar with this, read Exodus 25. The Ark of the Covenant, the whole table, the whole sanctuary was just a pattern, a very small, minuscule copy of what it's like in heaven, the throne room of God in heaven. The Ark of the Covenant was meant to be the throne of God. And God himself would appear to the Israelites, to the high priest, in between the cherub on top of the Ark of the Covenant. This was his throne. Read it. It's in the Old Testament. Read the description of the Ark of the Covenant. I'm not making this up. I don't have the time to prove it right now. But that's how it was. And there was an angel on either side depicting how at the throne of God, in the real one in heaven, there's an angel on either side of him. And it says that this angel, Lucifer, was one of the anointed cherubs who covers. And God put him that way. He says, you were perfect in your ways from the day you were created till iniquity was found in you. And then it goes on to describe the fall of Lucifer. I recommend reading this whole section, Ezekiel 28, 12 through 15. You see the fall of Lucifer. But the point of this is the king of Tyre and Lucifer are put right next to each other, juxtaposition. They're next to each other because the two are similar. You want to know what Satan's like? Look at this evil world dictator who's just controlling people, bossing people around, using people. He doesn't care about human life. He just wants more and more for himself, and he wants everyone to just do his bidding. That is what Lucifer's like. You want to know what Lucifer's like? Look at an evil world dictator. Why? Because Lucifer's controlling them. That's the idea. Juxtaposition. This is one of the keys to understanding the Bible, is understanding this principle of juxtaposition. All right. So Satan is behind all evil world governments, according to Ezekiel 28 and Isaiah 14. These are just two examples of Satan being behind world governments. So our final summary. We're done already. This is pretty quick. Revelation 13 quotes Daniel 7. Daniel 7 builds on Daniel 2. And then how do you understand Bible prophecy? Well, you let the Bible explain itself. And then we looked at how Satan is behind all evil world dictators. So the New World Order, who's behind that? Who's trying to get all the world into one government and have evil men rule that? Satan's behind that. And who are, and the powers that are trying to say, hey, we need to go back to national sovereignty. That is what God instituted back at the Tower of Babel. He separated man and spread them out, separated them by their languages and their nations. That's a principle from God. So you don't need to be ashamed of being somebody who's proud of your nation and wants the nations to, I want all nations to do well. But you do well in your nation, I'll do well in my nation. We can be friends, whatever. But being a patriot and wanting your nation to be separate and not some giant world blob, you don't need to be ashamed of that. That's a biblical principle. All right. These are our topics. So I'm going to give you an idea of what we're going to look at, and then we're done. This is the whole series that we're going to do on the New World Order. First, this is the one we've already done, New World Order in Revelation 18. This study was Daniel and Revelation connection. Next, we're going to look at Daniel chapter 2 and 7 quickly. This is the basics of prophecy. I call it Prophecy 101. You got to understand Daniel 2 and 7. And then all of Revelation, I'm telling you, all of it will open up for you if you understand these basic principle chapters. Then we're going to go into a little bit more detail on Daniel 7, and particularly the little horn, which is the Antichrist. Then we'll go back into Revelation. We're going to look at the great harlot of Revelation 17. Then we're going to look at the secret behind secret societies. That's going to be a fascinating one. I'm going to give you a lot of quotes from that one, from the highest level books of secret societies. Then we're going to look at the beast and American liberty. And then we're going to look at America in prophecy. Is America in prophecy? Yes, it is. I will show you that. There's some good stuff and some bad stuff. And then finally, we're going to look at Christian nationalism in the image of the beast. This is one that's going to be very hard to do, and it's, what do I mean by this? Don't worry, we'll get there. All right. So that is our study for today. Thank you for joining me. Again, this will be on YouTube. I'll eventually get it on Rumble, but it's on YouTube Live now. I'll post the video again and clips on YouTube. It'll be on X, Instagram, eventually Rumble, and all the major podcast platforms, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Please follow, like, share, all that good stuff on all of these platforms. Please follow me there and share these videos if you were blessed. Thank you so much. God bless, and we will see you next time.